number 202. And another closed Highland distillery, not too far from Montrose when we had the Lochside yesterday. This is North Port Brechin, and it's actually North Port Brechin it's either Northport or Brechin. Brechin is here, and this was a distillery that was, strictly speaking, it actually started as an illegal distillery. It was founded by three brothers, David, John and Alexander Guthrie, in 1820. Now, the Excise Act didn't actually kick in until 1823. So, strictly speaking, for the first couple of years, it wasn't actually a legal distillery. And at the point of 1823, they then changed the name to Brechin. Now, the guys were a farming family, and it changed to Brechin from originally Townhead. That was the original name of it, and they set up a company called the Townhead Distilling Company. So in 1825, another distillery, which I actually sampled a few nights ago, called Glencadam, opened up quite literally across the road. So for those guys, it was a case of, what the hell's going on here? You know, we thought we were onto a good thing here. So it was becoming a little bit confusing as to Glencadam were kind of Glencadam of Brechin. They were called Brechin. It was like, what's going on here? Now, Brechin it used to be, I think it was like a walled city, and there were gates in the walls, and the distillery is at the north end of the town. So they called themselves Northport because it was the north edge of the town. So in 1839, it changed from Brechin to Northport. So since then it's been known as one or the other. It's either Northport or Brechin, and most places you'll see tend to just call it Northport Brechin and covers both sides. The Distillers Company Limited, DCL, purchased the distillery in 1922. Now, DCL over the years eventually became Diageo, and it was owned by them. It has been owned, not anymore. It was owned by them all the way through. They didn't have any production, basically shut down between 1926 and 1937, and then also again between 1939 and 1948, and particularly in the Second World War, the distillery buildings themselves were actually used as a base for Polish infantry. So it carried on going, and it was sort of ticking along, being used mainly for stock for DCL stroke Diageo, what would become Diageo, their brands, bells, things like that. And it closed in 1983. Another one that closed in 1983, exactly the same as Lochside, which was down the road. Surplus to requirements, not enough demand, been making loads to satisfy demand, which disappeared, mid-80s, dead. So it was, closed in 83 and eventually redeveloped completely in 1990. It's now a shopping centre, but at the time in 1990, if you're watching in the UK and you're old enough, you might remember a supermarket chain called Safeway, and that's what it turned into. Now, I don't know whether Safeway actually took some of the distillery buildings and converted it into a supermarket, or whether they just knocked the whole thing down and rebuilt it. But Summerfield took over Safeway. Now it is a shopping centre. And so it was like the remaining buildings were completely demolished in 1994. So my suspicion is that Safeway kind of took maybe a couple of the buildings and added onto it for their supermarket. 94, demolished the whole lot, started again, rebuilt, gone, doesn't exist anymore. So this particular one is another connoisseur's choice from Gordon MacPhail. So this is what the bottle looks like. This was a donation from somebody that has asked to remain anonymous. Fair enough, no arguments with that. I will respect your wishes. I'm not going to call you Mr. X. It's not Mr. X. He's a separate entity that also doesn't want to be known. So I'll call you Mr. Z, but there isn't a picture for Mr. Z, sorry. But thank you anyway. So this is 1981 distilled, 17-year-old, so 1998. And it's 40%. So in the last video I talked about the fact that connoisseur's choice, I thought they were all for 43%. Obviously not, because this is 40, so I was talking out my backside. So, two on the bounce now, where they shut in the same year, they're roughly in the same area, and you can't get them anymore. Now, I was looking for the price of this, and nowhere lists it, But the Whisky Exchange have got various North Port Stroke Brecons for sale, and they were selling for about 150, 200 quid a bottle. So I've got a feeling that this could be on the pricier side. So I'm very, very lucky to have it. Thank you, Mr. Z. Y? Z, Y? X? Not Mr. X. Did I say Y or Z? Whatever. Don't matter. Thanks anyway. Cheers for this. Always fascinating to try something that is long gone, because a bit like the Lockside, if it's that good, you sort of wish that it hadn't happened. Now, this is a different beast altogether. It's quite fruity, actually. It's a definite raisiny character to it as well. Do you know what? It's not too dissimilar to a bourbon. I'm willing to bet it's bourbon cask it's matured in. Colour's pretty decent. I think with Connoisseur's Choice there's no colouring, no chill filtering, all of that lot. But there's a definite raisiny fruitiness to it, and it's like a lighter bourbon. It's not quite Christmas cakey enough, but having just done 60 American whiskies, the vast majority of which were bourbons, that's a characteristic that's coming back. Very interesting. Not overly powerful, but what's there is subtle but good. Now, this is bottled at 40%. The Lockside was bottled at 43. And I think this needs to be at 43 as well. It's very, very light. It feels like it's already been watered down. It feels like it's been tempered down slightly too much. There's just a little bit of a weakness there. There's something missing in the middle that just feels like it's been knocked down too far. And I think just a few extra percent more, raising that ABV, would just lift that flavour up. There's the finish is okay. There's some really nice fruitiness to start with, and then it just dies. It just goes. There's nothing, and then it comes back a little bit on the finish. It's a nice raisininess. You hold it in your mouth, and there's a nice sweet raisin and sultana. Not complex. There's a slight oakiness to it as well. You swallow, and you get a kick at the back of your throat, but not massively so. And the raisiness disappears as you swallow, and then all of a sudden your mouth is just empty. There's nothing, and then this wave of heat comes in, but it's not obvious. It's just like, oh, you've been drinking whiskey. It's just missing something right in the middle, which is such a shame, because that initial burst of flavour, it's really fruity. It's really nice. There's a bit of dry oak at the back, sort of right on the end and in the back of your throat when you swallow. But just in the middle, it's like flavour, nothing. Like on a graph, flavour dies, and then on the finish it comes back, but not as much as the flavour in the middle, at the start. It starts off a really good whiskey, really good. If that carried on, that'd be an absolute cracker. That would be almost like if you like bourbon, try this Scotch, or if you want an introduction to bourbon as a Scotch drinker, try this. It's got some of those characteristics. It just doesn't last. It just dies. That fruity flavour buggers off somewhere, goes off for a wander, and just leaves you sat there holding a glass going, well, where's that gone? That's a shame. That's a real shame, that. Because the flavour that's there is very, very pleasant indeed. There's a nice maltiness to it as well. Slight oakiness, which it's a little bit drying at the end, but there's a lovely fruit and malty vibe to it that is there for about 30 seconds and then just buggers off. And if it stayed and hung around for a bit of a chat, it would actually be really, really nice. That's a shame. A little bit disappointed with that. I'd be very interested to see if there's any other North Ports out there. I mean, at £200 a bottle, I'm nowhere near it, but I can imagine that there might be some better versions of Northport out there that maintain that flavour profile all the way through, and if they do, they're going to be absolute crackers. But unfortunately, that one just doesn't. Well, it was nice though, and it's always nice to try something new, and it's always nice to try something that otherwise you wouldn't be able to get. So, Mr. Z, thank you very much for that, much appreciated. 202 down, and nearly done with our Highlands, and then we're going to go for a bit of a travel over the Atlantic. So I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.